talk about anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated, yes,
To our favorite shows.
Oh, my tickets!
Everybody loves Hypnotoad.
Scary Dog!
Pearson at Blurnsball.
Futurama.
Hello out there and welcome to TV Party Tonight. I am your host and feeling mean, green, and poured straight into these jeans. I'm joking, of course. I'm wearing sweatpants. I'm your host, Alexis Hejna, and today we are talking She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. Joining me is Mark Radulich. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I dressed up for this. Hey, Critical Drinker fans. Hey, and Midnight's Edge fans. Look. Hey, more specifically, hey, Effie fans. Smash the patriarchy. Woo! Wu-Tang. All right, I'm good now.
All right, and also coming in, good thing that his boss let him have the afternoon off so that he could record with us. Andrew Graham, how is your boss, Andrew?
He's taking a nap right now, so that seems to be about the extent of it. I do hope everyone signed their NDA before doing this program, by the way.
Oh,
hang
absolutely.
Hang on.
Oh.
All right, I'm back. Went to go sign it.
That was a quick sign.
I don't. My handwriting's for shit.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so yes, we are talking She-Hulk, the series that has emasculated so many men, the series that has proved that maybe we should go the way of the Handmaid's Tale. Brought to you, of course, by Marvel Studios and Disney. This is the story of Jennifer Walters, the cousin to the Incredible Hulk, who, through a mishap in a car accident, finds her blood mixed with Hulk's, and now she has the ability to become a She-Hulk. And of course, she is trying to balance that, being a superhero and a lawyer, because
She's a busy businesswoman who don't need no man.
Absolutely.
By the way, this show has emasculated me so much I am now identifying as an eggplant. So please use my correct pronouns. What, Andrew?
What are the correct pronouns for an eggplant?
We'll figure it out.
Parmesano, I think.
Well done.
All right. So yeah, this show has stirred up so much buzz. We've got a lot to talk about. But I believe we had a request to just go ahead and knock the first thing out of the park, the CGI.
Apparently the CGI, just in general at Marvel, more and more about this is coming out. Andrew, I think you and I have talked about it in private chat, that the CGI department, the VFX department, is now being so overworked at Marvel. There's like a revolution happening, and this show seems to be the result of them not being able to do the best job they can, then not having the right amount of time or enough people to get it right, and then just going, whatever, like, this is all we can do, deal with it. I believe it was compared to like PlayStation cutscenes. And they're not wrong. The CGI in this is fucking terrible. There are times where sometimes She-Hulk looks okay, and then there are other times it literally does look like a cutscene from a video game. She's so stiff and so like robotic walking. It is obvious to the point where if it wasn't the fact that the show is so slight to begin with, you know, and that I would not be able to take the show seriously. It just takes you right out of it.
I don't know if it quite went that far for me. And I think, Mark, you kind of touch on a lot of the issues where, and it's not even they don't really have a special effects department at Marvel. They basically contracted out to a number of different effects houses. And I mean, kind of some of the stories I've heard, and I'll admit I haven't read these in detail, but a lot of these houses are reporting that they're just getting way too short of deadlines, not enough budget to work with, and things along that line. And I think when you get into what's supposed to be like a photorealistic character, I think that's obviously where you start to really push things and get into the uncanny valley. Yeah. I'd say in terms of She-Hulk, for most of the time, the character looks fairly good. I think the biggest issue is what's called the comping in. So whenever you're actually putting that character into the background, and I mean, I think on some level, this is one of the things that I think didn't do themselves any favors, was they put all of this mostly in daytime. And in daylight, you do not have the ability to hide your issues as much. You know, that's why so much CG is put in at night.
let me throw this also out there. Principal photography for most major motion pictures is 2 to 3 years prior to any major release with a lot of CGI in it. Those people have the time. You want to know when principal photography started with this? April 10th, 2021.
Oh, geez.
This thing debuted.
It's a smidge close.
Yeah, this thing debuted in August of this year. When did they wrap? Hang on. Jamil said she was filming her scenes August 15th. Okay. So they started filming, principal photography started April 10th of 2021. It was done by August. There was no time. There was no time to get this as right as, some of the early Marvel movies or like Lord of the Rings, where there's a lot of heavy CGI. I mean, go back and look at, these are 20-year-old movies now, but go back and look at those Lord of the Rings movies. They're almost seamless. Like the motion capture for Smeagol and all of that looks as real as anybody else in the cast. And compare that to She-Hulk, and the only thing I can tell you is there's just not enough. There's not enough time.
I'm going to be interested to see what happens when. Are you guys familiar with Corridor Crew?
Who?
With what?
Corridor Crew. Sorry, they're a VFX house that does a lot of stuff on YouTube, but they also do a VXF artist react to Great and Bad CGI series. They're up to like episode 80 or something like this, and this is something that they'll do on a regular basis. So I think I remember them at least having an initial look at like the She-Hulk trailers, but I'm assuming at some point within the next couple weeks they'll probably actually go ahead and do the show. And these guys are actually fairly well connected. They've had a number of guys who actually work for these VFX houses on the show with them, so you can get some really good commentary on what did or didn't happen, or what may or may not have gone right or wrong on the series in terms of the way it was all put together.
All right. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. This, like I said, this show has stirred so much controversy, so many angry tweets, both in the show and without the show. I mean, we've got a whole subplot with a website filled with angry man babies who are just so unhappy that a She-Hulk even exists, because we already have a Hulk. Why do we need a woman version of everything? I mean, woman version of Thor was already bad enough as it is. For the record, I am actually quoting direct lines from the show. This is not just assumptions about...
But people have said that.
Yeah, exactly.
When they announced the She-Hulk show, it's funny. A lot of this is being driven by people who are lifelong comic book fans, but I'm guessing there are fans of the comic that still don't know the length and breadth of comic book history, because there were people claiming to be comic book fans that were like, "What the hell? Why do we need a She-Hulk if we already have a Hulk?" And it's like, I don't know, 50 years of comic books. Like multiple iterations, several different writing teams. You know, she was in the goddamn Fantastic Four.
Or how about the people complaining, oh, she gets to be able to control her powers and actually stay, in control when she's a Hulk. Why is that? Why do women? It's like, again, that's the way it was in the comics.
Yeah. She was never human Jennifer Walters in the comic. I'm not even aware of whether or not she could change back. I was under the impression, and again, I'm not the world's foremost authority on early She-Hulk, but I was under the impression that was a permanent gig, that she was never Jennifer Walters until, unless she was depowered or something.
Where's Jesse when we need him?
Or Evan. That's who I really needed for this show.
And I think that's kind of an interesting point to bring up right there, even with mentioning, those two guys. What's up, guys? But, there's definitely a degree of comic book fans who definitely act as gatekeepers on some level, where it's like, I have thing that I like, and if you don't like thing, then bugger off. And then there's guys who have actually gone through and have read kind of the entire runs of all this stuff. I've got a couple of friends along with like Jesse and Evan who have done that, and they're like, yeah, this tonally works with She-Hulk.
In the writing, when this show was first being formulated, I was doing research on it, and then as it progressed, I would continue to follow. One of the things I cited was the John Byrne run on She-Hulk. And then if you talk to some of our friends who I would consider pretty level-headed comic book experts, they're like, this screams Dan Slott. And to the point where I think some of the characters, and again, I have the Dan Slott volume on my desk. I just haven't read it yet. But my understanding is there are characters that are directly taken from the Dan Slott era. Here's my starting right off the bat. Here's my biggest issue with the internal debate amongst Marvel fans, whether they be strictly comic book fans or fans of the comics and the movies or whatever, is that they say we want comic book accurate stuff. You know where I'm going with this, Andrew, because I said almost the exact same thing to you, and I said it to Bailey as well. We want stuff. We want comic book adaptations. We want what we read on the screen. And Marvel goes, fine, here. And then everyone cries and pisses and moans because it wasn't specifically what they wanted. They want the 90s grimdark Frank Miller's Batman, Dark Knight Returns, everything is depressing and in the rain comic book era. They want the Punisher, Ghost Rider, and Wolverine killing everybody. That's what they were referring to. They're not referring to any era of She-Hulk. That's it. They're not. It's like, Marvel, give us more stuff that we wanted. The same three characters: Punisher, Ghost Rider, Wolverine. That's it. They weren't asking for any of this stuff.
It must be Batman, but it has to be after about 1975, so we have no trace of him ever cracking a smile.
Right. It has to be Ninja Batman, not World's Greatest Detective Batman. It always has to be like depressed, everything is in ruins and on fire Batman.
We tried that. It was the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie, and if everyone hated that.
Yeah. Give us hell, Quimby. So that is my major problem with the argument around She-Hulk is this is exactly what you people asked for. You asked for a comic book accurate She-Hulk. It is taking liberally from John Byrne and Dan Slott. And we're like, okay, but we didn't read that. Nobody gives a shit about that. To the point where it's like, you can't call us misogynists. We're not misogynists. We like women just fine, except that anytime anything is presented with women and done the way this was done, then it's like, oh no, this is just bad, or this is anti-man. No. Let's call it what it is. It's just not what you wanted. And therein lies my biggest gripe. And I say this all the time on Damn You Hollywood. The fact that you don't like something doesn't make it bad. And that is She-Hulk all over. It's not liked by a segment of the population, and they don't have the wherewithal or the critical thinking skills to separate that from their own ability to review the show. The show's not perfect, and we just talked about the CGI. The CGI is so bad it should be studied. But
there's going to be a ton of things we're going to talk about that it's like, I love the show, but even I'm going to admit there's been one or two episodes I was like, I so could have lived without that.
Look, yeah, the show's not perfect, but can we stop with I didn't like it and therefore it's bad?
Or just all these, very frankly, bad faith arguments. I'm not going to name names. Maybe the flag behind is a little bit of a clue, but as to one YouTube viewer who maybe posted an entire video criticizing the series off of one clip.
Why are you not calling Voldemort by his name?
Because I don't want to give him the likes.
Okay.
Oh.
Whatever.
Ouch.
Have I told you the story about my son's reaction to the Little Mermaid trailer and why I now refer?
God, I have to hear this.
It. Okay, I told the story I think on the Hellraiser review, but for those who haven't heard that, so I took my kids to go see Avatar. They showed the teaser trailer for the Little Mermaid. My daughter, who was 11 years old and grew up with the Disney princesses, has done the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, the whole 9 yards. Shrieked with glee. She almost started to cry. She was so happy on just that little bit alone. Does not care that the actress is black. Does not care that the hair is not fire red. Just was so happy to see the Little Mermaid on screen and to hear those tones. She was like, hooray, my thing that I like. And I hear my son in the distant background. Yeah, that doesn't look that great. And my daughter turns and looks at him, just like, shut up, I like it. And he was like, look, don't yell at me because it sucks. It's not my fault. To which Robert said, wow, you've distilled Twitter into one interaction between your children. But because of that, I now refer to my son as the critical stinker. Ta-da!
Yeah, I joked to the girlfriend when the trailer came out because I criticized as well, and she just looked at me and said, "Oh, face it, you're just completely dead to all Disney live action reboots." I'm like, okay, call a spade a spade. You're right.
Yeah.
It's like it's nothing. I was gonna say I have nothing against the casting, and I'll even admit the visuals don't look that bad. They released a poster, and you get a better look at Ariel's tail, and I was like, okay, the detail on this actually looks really good. I'm impressed with that. I've just sat through so many horrible movies, mostly for you, Mark.
Okay, Robert. All right, so back to She-Hulk.
Yeah.
I was about to say, let's just all batten down the hatches for when they finally reveal footage of Melissa McCarthy as Ursula.
Oh dear God.
Can we just all agree that's a bad idea?
Yes.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it.
So, Loki.
Did you stop? Did you abort my So Loki?
I didn't touch anything.
So, Loki.
There we go. Much better.
Yeah. It's like I'm not touching any Mark, I am not stupid enough to touch buttons when you start throwing in the clip. That doesn't mean I won't touch buttons as a result and respond to you with that, but I am not going to interrupt your clips.
Alexis, if you want to get in a button pushing war with me, bring it on. All right, back to She-Hulk.
All right. So yes, we have Jennifer Walters. She is the cousin of Bruce Banner. They are on a road trip. We finally get an answer on how Bruce was able to turn back into human Bruce from Smart Hulk at the end of Shang-Chi. He has, I guess, developed this device that keeps him under control, and they are run off the road by a Segarran ship, of all things, which we never get an answer for. I'm assuming this is gonna be all explained in the upcoming Planet Hulk. Wait, is that going to be a movie or a series?
Okay, so I haven't heard anything about I've heard World War Hulk.
World War Hulk, that's what I meant.
And I've heard World War Hulk is like going to be like a mini series, kind of like with the Defenders.
Okay, so I'm assuming it's going to be answering that because, yeah, the ship shows up. It's a Segarran ship. I'm like, ooh, who's on there? Who tracked him down? We don't know.
Yeah.
And they get into a car accident, and both their arms get cut, and their blood gets mixed. And yes, Jen is now a She-Hulk, but she is able to control herself and actually maintain her brain when she's in her Hulk body, something that took Bruce several years to get used to. So she goes back, and she ends up having to reveal her powers at her work, because a super powered influencer, every time I say that word, I die inside.
When you're done here, we have to go back to that first episode because that was just the beginning of the consternation volcano that erupted over this show.
Oh, this is still the first episode. I'm still
yeah.
So this super powered that thing bursts into the courtroom dressed like a cross-gendered Randy Macho Man Savage.
I was going with Reject from Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Andrew, you want to throw one in?
I'm not that quick-witted right now. I'm still working on my green tea, so.
Fair enough. And Jen is essentially forced to change into her She-Hulk form to fight this woman whose name is Tatiana, who we will learn a bit more about later in the series. And yeah, that's the end of the first episode. Mark, please, the floor is yours.
All right. So the first episode is a lot of, in good faith, Bruce trying to train Jen to control herself because of his own experiences. He destroyed not only Harlem, but Africa as well, if we all remember correctly, because of the Hulk. He has caused a significant amount of pain and suffering as the Hulk. And so he is very much trying to get ahead of this with her. He has no reason not to assume that she's going to be a rampaging monster. And because they only spent the one episode on it, so it does get a little short shrift. This is where, like, because of the complaining and the whining from the Neckbeard group, you miss the perfectly legitimate criticism that the writing in that episode is shitty. They don't give enough time and effort to explain why he's acting the way that he is. And then you only get her reaction. Her reaction is the focus. And her reaction, and somewhat rightfully so, but I think they missed the point with the criticism of this. She's like, listen, I have been a woman in a man's world for the majority of my life, and I have to control myself. I have to comport myself a certain way. And so all of those skills will be very useful in taming the Wild Hulk. and I don't need you to coach me. So here's the thing about Jennifer Walters as she's presented in this first episode. Imperfect. Very they refer to her as very millennial, which I agree with. It's a great starting place for an arc, where we travel someplace to get to a different point in your personality and presentation. We start here and we get nya. It's a great place for her to start. She's an asshole. and she's not listening to her cousin because she thinks she knows it all. And why wouldn't she? She's, a successful lawyer, smart gal. She's a busy businesswoman who don't need no man. These are all things that track for me. Jennifer Walters is a lot of women I know. She comes across as very, very true. And she's ripe for an adventure that changes her into a better, more thoughtful person at the end, which I think is entirely lost on people. That and Andrew, you and I have talked about this, and this I want to get your opinion on this idea that everybody has to start their television show already perfect. They're already made. They've already made the journey, and now we're just going to watch them like a video game character cut through bad guys, for however the length of the show. Like, there was no patience for tolerating her in the condition in the way that she is at the beginning of this show to see where she would end up at the end. It was like the expectation is that all of our characters should just be perfect right from the start.
Well, and if she was perfect right from the start, then obviously she'd get tagged with Mary Sue as well. So
yeah, you can't fucking win right now.
Sorry?
You can't fucking win right now.
No,
exactly. You can't. I mean, I enjoyed that first episode. I'll probably disagree with you a little bit. I actually thought with where they took the series, they set it up quite well, because I think they establish Jennifer Walters is a really interesting character. And maybe I'll start with that is, on the one hand, she is very competent. She is very capable within certain aspects of her life. I think she's also somebody who comes off as arrogant at times. And also, I think she's also tremendously insecure in some ways.
Sure.
And I think that really kind of bears its way out during the series. I mean, I think, if you want to talk about where that arc goes, where she starts with, oh yeah, this is fine. I have a normal amount of rage, which is a great title for the episode. And she goes, I have to deal with all this shit on a normal day, and maybe I'll bring in a little bit of exterior perspective to this one, because I was watching this with my wife, and she's like, all that is true.
Yeah, I watched it with my wife too. My wife is not a fan of the Marvel movies. I mean, she thinks, Chris Hemsworth's a very pretty man and all that. But I other than the occasional Thor movie, I haven't gotten her to, or Guardians of the Galaxy, I haven't gotten her to watch any of these. She has zero interest. She watched this one and she watched Ms. Marvel. And hey, people, gatekeepers and people who think these shows are only for them, wide audience appeal. My wife and my kid both liked Ms. Marvel. My wife loved She-Hulk, thought it was great for the reason that you're citing, Andrew. Yep. Thought the character spoke to her and the experiences of women. For shame. that we not only address men and men's issues. Yeah.
And my wife's best friend came over, and she, I don't know how much of a fan of, we've never really talked about Marvel stuff at length, but they started on She-Hulk, and they're like, yeah, it's great. But I think going back to I think kind of that arc established by the first episode, she starts from a place where it's like, I've got this, I've got a certain amount of control in my life that I have to maintain. And when you get to the end of episode 7, and she's put in an absolutely god awful, embarrassing situation, she goes complete Hulk at that point. And I mean, you talk about her arrogance, and yeah, that's that, set up. She's arrogant. Payoff. She has to deal with the consequences of it.
Very true. I think it's also important to note that Marvel clearly went with a different direction with the style of the show compared to what we've seen with other MCU shows. A lot of them have been very, very dark, very, very not brooding, but just a little more serious. They wanted to do something different this time. She-Hulk Attorney Law is a superhero comedy. It's meant to be a lot funnier, a lot more lighthearted. They realized that they couldn't really pull off Jen Walters in the same vein that they could Moon Knight or Jessica Jones.
But neither one of those characters calls for that. Jessica Jones is a traumatized character dealing with sexual trauma. Moon Knight's a schizophrenic. Neither one of those lend themselves to comedy. Exactly. However, almost the entire run on She-Hulk throughout the years, that was a comedy book. Christ, she did a bit with Howard the Duck. Not exactly known for his, grim dark era. I mean, so there almost was no other way to do this.
Yeah, one of the most infamous She-Hulk covers is her basically holding up a newspaper to cover herself and saying, "Is this really what you people want?" Jesse and I talked about that on another podcast, just the infamy of that cover. So, all right. So moving on, Jen gets a job. She loses her job for hulking out in the courtroom, but she gets another job offer at probably the most prestige law firm in the area, which she accepts. But it turns out they want her to stay in She-Hulk form every time she's working for them. And she's going to run the new superhuman law division, which personally I think was actually a really great idea, because this is going to allow us to bring in so many other superhero characters, supervillains. It's going to just really open that door to see how she interacts and how they interact with this world. I thought it was a great way to introduce other characters, bring in characters from other shows. We'll get to that cameo a little bit later. And I'm just going to say, I actually do like that they do how Jen is now feeling pressure to stay as She-Hulk. She, in a way, she just kind of feels like, well, did you hire me because I'm a lawyer, because I'm a good lawyer, because of my job, because, you know, my skills, or did you hire me to be a mascot?
Can we talk about that as a metaphor? You know, did you hire me for my good looks? Did you hire me for my big boobs, or did you hire me for my brain? You know, why does nobody as a woman want to hear what I have to say? Only what I look like, or, you know, what I look like next to them. These are common complaints. This is a very, you know, I think this is also why this show is rubbing a lot of people the wrong way, because, like, you know, again, geared towards women, dealing with issues that women deal with, and men don't have time for that. just none. We don't want to hear about what the women and your complaining and your, you know, hundreds of years of problems. Just, you know, but that's what it is. The She-Hulk thing, presenting a She-Hulk, is supposed to be a metaphor for women having to present the mask. You know, they have to live this mask, and then, you know, and then you go home and you think about, like, did they hire the mask, or did they hire me as the person? And that's a struggle for people, you know, because then it's like, well, do I have to keep the mask up all the time, or, you know, or can I be my genuine self? And I you can go even past that, because I think that's, in a different way, a very, very universal thing for people to deal with, both men and women, is, you know, every time you leave your house, all the walls got to go up and all the makeup has to come on, and, you know, we got to throw all the armor on, and you don't feel like you're ever truly seen. And after a while, it gets to people.
I'm just going to say, in the penultimate episode, when they award the female lawyer of the year to all the women there, and they ask them, what's it like to be a female lawyer? And we get that response from Mallory. It's like, underpaid, undernoticed, or underpaid, underprivileged, and having to constantly be asked questions like, what's it like to be a female lawyer? That registered with me very much. I have to deal with that. I am a business owner, and I have to deal with it. It's like, so what's it like being a lady business owner? It's like, well, I'm proud to be a lady business owner, but that doesn't define who I am. You know, it's like, yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Please.
What's it like to be a lady podcaster?
Good night, everybody.
You're
At
so
Mark
dead.
Radulich on Twitter.
Yeah. Send condolences and funeral bouquets. Melissa Radulich. And yeah, Mark, we've joked about how I'm the only woman on your staff. You know, I have made so many jokes whenever you ask me to jump in on a review of something, and you people are like, so why are you here? I'm like,
token woman.
Because it's like, I don't have a Y chromosome.
Yep.
That's literally why I am here.
We needed a broad for this to meet the quota, you know.
But that doesn't define who I am. I'm a podcaster for you first and foremost.
Right.
And I love working for you, even if you are a giant asshole.
Thank you. I take that as a compliment.
It was. So, but yeah, I get that kind of thing too. You know, I mean, I remember there was another podcaster put out saying, I'm looking for more contributors, specifically women.
Right.
And I jumped in on that, and then he started bringing in more women, and I realized he was also bringing in a lot of women that he just found attractive, and it was starting to feel very uncomfortable.
Boy, does it not feel like you're being brought in for your opinions, huh?
Yeah, pretty much.
Right. And so again, relating this all the way back to She-Hulk is when they're specifically saying to Jen Walters, we want you to present as She-Hulk. We want you to present as She-Hulk all the time. We want you to be the face of superhuman law. It's suddenly less about her ability as a lawyer and more about the fact that she has superpowers. Metaphor, ladies and gentlemen.
And superpowers she doesn't want.
Right.
Yeah, she never asked for this, and I love this. I do love the speech in the first episode between her and Bruce, when Bruce is like, you're going to have to get used to being a superhero, and she's like, I don't want to be a superhero. I have a job, and I'm good at that job, and I like that job, and I want to continue doing that job. Why do I have to be a superhero? And he says flat out, well, what else are you going to do as a Hulk?
You know what I related that to? Again, metaphorically, when I've heard women talk about a particular part of their body, that big boobs, for example. It's just like I've heard women complain, like, sure, this gets the attention when I wanted to get the attention, but it's also a hassle in all these other areas. Pain in the back. They have to do this. They have to do that. There's I've heard enough of this, and I don't want to belabor the point too much, but there is definitely sometimes I wish I didn't have big boobs kind of a thing, because one, that's all anyone ever sees. Two, sometimes it's more problems than they're worth. And so that's what I hear when I was like, I don't want superpowers. What I want is to be appreciated for who I am and how talented I am. Which is another thing that I enjoy about this show, is that regardless of how talented she thinks she is often undercut, Andrew. She is often undercut throughout this show and made to show that maybe she's not a know-it-all, which is, again, lost on a lot of people that are review bombing this.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've got... Maybe if I can hit like kind of 3 points here that I'm kind of thinking of just kind of in this element of the show. And I'll save that one for last. I think first one is we're definitely dealing with not even a reluctant superhero, but an unwilling superhero in a lot of ways. When you look at some of the characters they've brought in recently, like in both Hawkeye and in Miss Marvel, they're both fans of superheroes. They want to be superheroes. And now we have Jen, who wants no part of being a superhero.
Right.
I'll probably also just move into here, since we're getting a little bit into the legal discussion. I'll probably say this was probably one of my bigger criticisms of the show, where as much as it is She-Hulk attorney at law and it is supposed to be a legal comedy, this show was pretty light on the legal in a lot of ways. Like, I mean, there was only 2 or 3 really good legal scenes, and I'll probably get to one of those in a minute. And it didn't come up a lot. There wasn't a lot of opportunity to really have that courtroom work in there. And I guess one of the things I heard about, this was from a video, Mark, I sent this one to you. It's from Darren Mooney on The Escapist, talking about a quote from I think it's Jessica Gao, who was the head writer on this show. And she said, we're having a harder and harder time finding staff writers who know how to write courtroom scenes anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just not a skill that's there anymore. And the video I definitely recommend everyone check out, because it gets into a lot of the conversation around where we're at and why we're seeing some of the issues that we're seeing on not only Disney-based shows, but on a lot of streaming is the fact that people aren't getting long runs as staff writers on stuff like Law and Order anymore, and they're just not getting some of the kind of the reps in terms of story structure and things like that. And I think it explains a lot of what we constantly talk about here when we talk about pacing issues, setup, payoff, things like that in terms of a lot of the shows we review. And sorry, after that long sidebar, getting back to talking about Jen and her getting undercut. I mean, yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think, like I mentioned, she's both a character who is capable and is confident, but is also insecure in a lot of ways. And sometimes that doesn't manifest itself. It manifests itself in arrogance. I mean, I think kind of the episode I go to is where they have to have the trial with her, dealing with the copyright issue. Mm-hmm. And it's the discussion of, you're a lawyer, why didn't you copyright your own student name? Right.
And her explanation was like, I didn't even come up with this. They just yelled it at me on the news. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This isn't. You wouldn't have even. I got her point of view. Like, I didn't think to copyright something I didn't even want and sounded stupid in the first place.
Yeah. And I mean, that's probably one thing. I'll do another quick sidebar here, but I think that's one thing that I really did enjoy about this show, without necessarily diving into a lot of lore. And even though it had a lot of cameos, I felt like this added a lot of texture to the MCU universe.
Mm-hmm.
Because of course, you have to, if you're a superpowered individual, you have to deal with things like copyright.
Right.
Where do I get my super suit?
I mean, but all of Phase 4 has been doing that. We had, what was it, the Avengers the musical, or Rogers the musical, whatever the hell it was called.
I can do this all day.
Yeah.
Alexis, I'm going to give you a bit of a aneurysm here, but yes, superpowered influencers would be a thing. Also,
they would.
When we get the Blonsky, he kind of turns himself into his own self-help guru. Of course, there's going to be a self-help guru for
reform villains.
Exactly. And I mean, like the show is not necessarily. I think it's genuine in a lot of ways. It's definitely not necessarily kind to Jen a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I go to that. There's one scene that really sticks out to me, and it's when they're doing the trial about the copyright law, and it was after they basically come up with a strategy of bringing up all the guys that she had gone on these marginal dates with, sometimes horrible dates with, and the one kind of nice guy at the end. That says, would you have gone out with her if she presented as Jen Walters? And he says, no, she's not really my type. And this is one of the scenes where I think the expression and the CGI really worked. And she's just kind of sitting there and just kind of absorbing that, and just having this very kind of vulnerable moment in a lot of ways. And I'll give the show a lot of credit for having that.
Can we contrast that? With she goes on all these dates. Nobody's interested in her as Jen Walters, so she goes out as She-Hulk, and the only way anyone's interested in her is She-Hulk. But all she wants is to be appreciated for who she really is. And when she finds that guy, he's actually spying on her and stealing her identity. Yeah, this show is very protective of her. I can see why people think she's a fucking Mary Sue and all of that.
I will admit, some of the courtroom scenes irked me a little bit, but mostly just because I felt that. So a lot of times I was just watching going, yeah, that wouldn't have happened. For example, when we get the Daredevil episode and they're in court, and Leapfrog, who I freaking love that they brought him in, because he is just one of the greatest would-be wannabe superhero / supervillains in Marvel. Every time he shows up, it is a total joke. Just like, crap. It's like, who told Leapfrog we were going to be meeting here, kind of thing. And he proudly announces that he put jet fuel in his boots, and the designer Jacobson is just like, well, no wonder it freaking crashed. I told you not to do that. And the judge throws the case out, and I'm sitting going, shouldn't this have been discussed? It's like, you guys usually have a discussion without a judge between the two lawyers, see if you can settle out of court and talk about this, because it's like that kind of stuff should have been thrown out long before a judge ever, got a hold of that kind of thing. And it's like, you didn't go over that. It's like, Jen, you didn't do your research and find out that he did something that's stupid.
Yeah. Like, I mean, and I think I like that because I like the, kind of the underlying legal principle of warranty and, using things fit for purpose and things like that. But yeah, she would have had a conversation. It's like, did you get any instructions with your super suit? Did you use it as prescribed by the designer? Things like that. But, and again, that's something like, I mean, I hate to say it, but it doesn't even kind of, I'll use an example of a show I like, and Mark, I know you like this one. Like, I kind of wish it had at least risen to the level of Suits.
All right. So, yes. So she is moving on. Walters is now running the superhuman law firm, or part of the law firm. And her first case is to represent Emil Blonsky, who has completely changed from the character we saw in The Incredible Hulk. But I know a lot of fans were really happy to have him back. I'm a huge Tim Roth fan. Love when I see him movies. I was so thrilled to hear he was coming back, especially after that little tease that we got in Shang-Chi, in the Fight Club. And yeah, he is completely reformed. And oh my God, I love the fact that he has got multiple life partners. It's just like, how freaking Manson can you make this? Oh my God. But I think it also says on the fact that Walters tries to get out of it because there is a conflict of interest. The dude tried to kill her cousin. when they destroyed Harlem. And her boss is essentially going, nope, don't want to hear it, don't care, go do it. And there is a lot with her boss, kind of pushing her, again, more as the mascot than anything. He doesn't want to hear about a conflict of interest. He doesn't want to hear about any other problems. When Tatiana gets the copyright thing and, starts going, starts using She-Hulk as her brand, the boss comes in and goes, why did I see an advertisement for a She-Hulk booty boosting shake? Still trying to figure out the science of that one, actually.
Like all that stuff, there is no science.
Oh, yeah. But again, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about Jen Walters. He doesn't care about any conflict he has. She's She-Hulk to him. And he's just like, you need to do what I want She-Hulk to do. He doesn't care that there's a conflict of interest. He doesn't care that, she as a person didn't, copyright her or trademark her own name. I thought somebody was going to jump in after that. Apparently I was wrong.
I didn't know if you had a question or anything. And I mean, if you're looking for a response to that, I mean, there was a criticism about the men in this show. Everyone, it's the same. I've brought this up a couple of times. My grandmother always complaining about how Italians are. They're either dumber in the mafia. A lot of complaints online about how men are presented. And look, we've done our fair share of complaining about that too. But I would like to think that ours is not unfair. I think when we cite it out, we understand that men are imperfect. And when presented as so, that is part of the human experience. It's okay. There's, I think, somewhat of an unfair criticism here that every man in this show is a moron, or whatever. Here's my problem with that. It's entirely believable that someone would act that way, which is why I don't really have a problem with it. You have a guy, he's just like, my concern is, this is a private law firm. This is not a government job. This is a private law firm. They are trying to make money. And I don't know if you've talked to most people who run businesses. They're not interested in a lot of the detail. They just want to make money. And so him going, I'm not really interested in your conflict of interest. Just get this done because it's money. It's a case. It's a job. It's a gig. So it's
also appearances. Got to keep that up. Got to keep it going. It's like, we are now the superhuman law firm. We need to make sure that we're, presenting a proper image of that.
Right. And so when you have the situation where she, where he says to her this specific thing you brought up, where, he's like, why did I see a billboard here? It's not a dumb thing. It's not even like a self-centered thing. It's like, is this going to cost me money? That's all that's happening in that scene. So I don't understand why that bothered people as much as it did. But, to me, it seemed pretty straightforward. It was just like, is this going to be a problem? Is this going to cost me? Is this going to cost me clients? It's going to cost me money.
So, of course, we have Jen defending Blonsky. We also have the first appearance of the Wrecking Crew, which actually got me excited. Love the idea that they've kind of stolen Asgardian technology to make their weapons. Thought that was a neat touch. And I'm not going to lie, I just freaking love that they attack Jen. She transforms as She-Hulk, and it proves that these four are completely incompetent at their jobs.
Yeah, that is one of my criticisms. I just wish I wish they had done more with them. I like the Wrecking Crew from, when I've seen them in the Thor series. They popped up here and there over Marvel Comics. Not that they were like Doctor Doom level villains or anything like that, but this was a personal one for me. This isn't necessarily a craft thing, though. I can make it one. I think if you're going to put stuff in the show, maybe make it mean a little bit more than, why use the Wrecking Crew if they're just going to be nameless goons and you're not going to use them again? And the only one that they do use is the guy with the crowbar. But by that point, he's not doing anything with the crowbar. He's not really part of the Wrecking Crew. That could have been a completely different character. So it's like if you wanted, I think there were other characters. Marvel's list of characters is about, 1 million long. There's any number of characters that don't quite mean as much to the fandom that they could have used for that. And then have them show up later in the group therapy session to where you're not abusing what I think the Wrecking Crew are more popular than they're giving them credit for. That seemed like, oh, nobody cares about the Wrecking Crew. Everyone thinks they're a joke. It's like, well, no, like some people like them and maybe don't misuse them like that. I thought the way they did it, it's so hard because everything looks so goofy in comics, and when you try to make something goofy in real life, it just highlights how ridiculous it is. So I think they tried, but because again they weren't paying a lot of attention to it and they weren't making it more serious, that looked goofier than it needed to be. I gotta go AFK for a second.
Okay, Andrew, I'll go ahead and direct this to you because I think this actually, what he's talking about, the Wrecking Crew, does add up to what is admittedly a pretty big problem with the series, and that's the lack of a central antagonist. You know, we get Tatiana, who appears for a couple, and she's annoying as hell, and she is definitely an obstacle, but she's not really the central antagonist. She is just an annoyance. You know, we got the Wrecking Crew. Yes, they show up once, they're gone. And then we have this big buildup with Intelligentsia and the guy running it. And again, I talked about this on another podcast, and we threw out so many theories about who was going to be the bad guy at the end of this. We thought it was, Abomination was going to be actually double dealing, that the whole I'm reformed and I'm running a retreat thing was a facade. Someone suggested the Leader, who we know is coming back for Captain America, the new Captain America movie. And I thought that actually made a ton of sense if you look at how he acted in the Edward Norton Hulk movie. You know, it's like, oh my God, of course he'd want She-Hulk's blood. And the bad guy is a douchey hipster who's essentially pouting because he got turned away by She-Hulk on a date.
Yeah, and I think, Alex, I'd agree with that. We're kind of on our second, even going back to Miss Marvel, we're kind of on our second Marvel series here that doesn't really have a strong overall arc on this. And I mean, I don't even know if it's necessarily an antagonist. I mean, I kind of got a kick out of it being the, I mean, maybe just goes to how meta the show realized it was in terms of the reception it was going to get. But I think there was something kind of brilliant about it being a lot of nerdy, actually nerdy is not even the right word. A lot of kind of toxic fanboy types who were kind of the ultimate enemy at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I will have to criticize that scene though. Man, those guys looked way too well kept to be having those kind of online personalities.
No kidding. It's like I understand it's Hollywood. Actors are gorgeous. I understand that you want to get some beautiful people in there, but oh my God. Yeah, it's like, where are the neckbeards? There were no literal neckbeards at that meeting. You missed the mark completely.
I literally turned to my wife and said, I don't believe this scene. I should be able to smell it through the screen. As awful as that sounds. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, there was definitely a little bit of a lack of overall arc. And I mean, one thing I understand the show was trying to do was to take a little bit more of a purely episodic approach to the show, where as opposed to it being like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which was arguably like a 6-hour movie cut into 6 parts. This was going to also try and do a little bit of that, kind of case of the week sort of thing. But again, they kind of dropped it there. There's definitely a little bit of identity crisis when it came to exactly what this show wanted to be. And I think that does manifest a little bit. And they do definitely kind of poke fun at things. Like, again, we talk about Leapfrog. I was just trying to look up the rest of the characters that came in during the retreat. So, Man-Bull and Porcupine and things like that. And apparently those are perfectly comic accurate costumes. They're just kind of ridiculous characters.
So I got to bring that up because Jeff and I got into kind of a fight about that on the first episode of the Whiskey Rebellion. I hadn't seen it yet. I hadn't seen the episode, but I saw his TikTok, and like the caption of his TikTok was something along the lines of the last episode of She-Hulk gave me erectile dysfunction. Okay, that's funny. I don't know what the context of that is.
Everything gives him erectile dysfunction, apparently.
I'm guessing he's used that before.
He uses it almost every week about Brie Larson.
Does he really? Oh, God, he's still on that?
He is still on that. He
Seriously?
is still on Brie Larson's flat ass.
Moving on. Anyway, I assumed it was just specifically related to that episode. I'm like, God, what was so wrong with this? And I didn't see what his TikTok was. I just saw the caption, and I'm like, okay, apparently this really bothered Jeff. And then I had him on the show, and we weren't really scheduled to talk about She-Hulk at the time, but I was like, I mentioned something. We were talking about the Black Panther trailer, and then I somehow got into the She-Hulk. I'm like, what is your beef with episode 7? He was like, it emasculated every single man on that episode. It emasculated every single man on the show. And I'm like, it was a group therapy session. Like, they're supposed to be showing their feelings and dealing with their frustrations and their traumas, and they're supposed to be sharing. He was like, it was emasculating. I'm like, so what we're saying here is, and it's
men aren't supposed to go to therapy?
Well, we did an entire thing about this with The Boys season 3 about how it is a trait of toxic masculinity to both. You have men who already struggle with expressing themselves and dealing with their emotions and seeking help, and it is you're seen as emasculated if you, going to Jeff's point, you're seen as emasculated if you try to get help for yourself, if you express that you have emotions. This is a common thing actually on TikTok, is men putting up stuff that says, hey, anytime we try to tell people that we have problems and that we need to talk about things, we're called pussies, go to work. Okay? And so then you do that. You say, I'm going to bottle up all my feelings. And hey, because we're imperfect human beings and we're not expressing ourselves, we tend to rage out. Now we're toxic. There's no winning. There's no winning. And when they try to deal with that in the show, it evokes a reaction out of someone like, God bless him. This is not to criticize Jeff, but it evoked a reaction out of Jeff. Like, well, why do we have, this is not what I want to be watching in my superhero show, I think is what he was trying to tell me. I want to see Daredevil kicking the shit out of people in a hallway, not men talking about their feelings. If I wanted to watch men talk about their feelings, I'd watch In Treatment. Fair, but can we not have elements of the entire human experience in our comedy show about a rage monster? I'm just asking for a friend.
Oh, exactly. I kind of like that episode. I mean, I thought the humor was a bit broad in places, but okay. But I think, again, there's a ring of authenticity to it, both in the terms of Blonsky, as I mentioned, having a little bit of a self-help thing, but also the fact that, once superheroes are a thing, people are going to either they're going to try and leverage that for themselves. They're going to try and turn themselves into a superhero. Like, I mean, I've talked about this before on other podcasts. Like, I've done martial arts for 20 years, and there is no shortage of fraudsters out there. Mm-hmm. And, now we're looking at a whole new genre of them that people have referred to as gravy seals, which sounds exactly what it looks like. Go Google it on your own and you'll see some very silly stuff. But it's like, there wasn't anything particularly wrong with that episode. And if it was, and if it was anything to do with those characters, it was because they were kind of being shown to be flawed as they were.
The other thing about it, which I was trying to explain to Jeff, and he was not getting it because he was very much focused on his point, which was men should look like men when they're men, and you do your mental health in private. God damn it, not in my She-Hulk show. Fair, I guess. But it missed the entire point of her monologue. She has a really great monologue at the end of that episode where she finally comes clean and talks about how she's feeling. And it to me, it was like the most resonant part of the entire series. It was also an example of her growth as a character, which everyone seems to bypass or utterly ignore.
It's also relatable, again, to a lot of women. I mean, I would like to hope that I have never been to the case of, oh no, I don't have Wi-Fi signal, I need to get out of here because there's still a teeny tiny second he could text me. But yes, I have had moments where I have felt that lost, that alone, that dejected, and it feels horrible. And her bit about, it's like, I thought I finally found someone because they'd gone on a few dates and she genuinely thought they had a connection. Again, finding out that he's a spy who was hired to, essentially infiltrate her life. But I know that I'm pretty sure at least you guys have also had a case of, it's like, I thought I had a connection with someone. Maybe it wasn't a romantic connection. Maybe it was a friend. Maybe it was a work thing. It's like, I thought my boss finally got me. And when it stops, when the connection just disappears, you feel not just empty, but you're confused. You're going, well, was it me? Did I do something wrong? Is there a reason for this? And it beats you up.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, Mark. Her speech about how she finally felt accepted by this guy and how horrible it is, it really does ring true for a lot of people.
Yep. All right, Alexis, what else you want to talk about?
Well, we did somehow pass up in the third episode the clip that destroyed the internet. She-Hulk. Twerking.
All right, let's talk about it. So, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but women dance. That's a thing they do. Women, if TikTok is any indicator, women shaking their ass and twerking is a thing that happens. And it's not just big girls, not just black girls. It's all kinds of girls. White girls, small girls, skinny girls, pretty girls, ugly girls. Everyone likes to shake that ass.
And if Megan Thee Stallion is in my office, I am the whitest woman on the planet, and I will fucking twerk.
Yeah, I don't understand why that upset people. Like, Andrew, did you happen to catch what exactly was the through line? What was the argument that people were purporting as to why this was a bad thing?
I don't know if I actually paid close enough attention to the criticism. I knew there was outrage, but I think if you're getting that pissed off over that kind of scene, then I think there's a real level of just, like I said, I mean, I've used this phrase before, but kind of bad faith arguments being really, I mean, I'm just going to come out and say it. You're being precious about the whole thing. It's a comic book character.
So there's a lot of, I'm going to take this in a slightly different direction. There's a lot of criticism about the Thor character, especially in light of Love and Thunder, which people didn't love, and it didn't do that great.
It's not pretty damn good. It was like
it had its flaws, and it was nowhere near as good as Ragnarok.
I think
Robert.
I'll agree with
that. It was in the 700 millions. They were looking for $1 billion with that one. When it does not do as good as its predecessor.
Yeah. Marginally so. It was not a flop by any means.
No, didn't say it was. Just didn't do. There's some backlash. One of the criticisms of Thor is that they've made him a complete idiot. Thor in the comics is not an idiot. Thor in the comics is very serious. Thor in the comics, is a warrior god. In many parts of his existence, struggling with the weight of being the Prince of Asgard and all of that. And none of that is in the Marvel iteration of him. Not at least not since the second movie. They've made him more of like a comedy character. And look, that appeal. This is the problem that gets lost on people. Broad characters tend to appeal to a greater majority of people outside of comic book fandom. But if you're a comic book purist and you see Thor not behaving like Thor, then it's all shit and it needs to be burned to the ground. And so I think people looked at She-Hulk and was like, I just want all my characters to be serious and to be taken seriously. And I wonder how much of this is an insecurity. Like this might be an underneath thing, and I might be reading too much into it, but I'm wondering how much for people, they're so insecure about themselves and they're so insecure about their love for comics that if somebody sees one of their beloved characters doing anything less than awesome, they're going to turn and look at them and go, why do you like this silly shit? And because they're so sensitive, if you ask them, why do you like this silly shit? They're going to fucking crumble. There was nothing wrong with what she did. She was dancing with a celebrity at the end of an episode. The fact that we have to spend this much time talking about it irks me, and I don't mind doing it because I wanted to address it, but the fact that I have to fucking irks me. Like, you use the word precious. We're this sensitive. We're this precious about meaningless shit that it generates an online fucking debate. It drives me nuts. It's why a lot of times I can't be on Twitter.
Let's face it, Mark. We're on Twitter under duress.
I'm definitely on Twitter to market the podcast, and I don't know if
that's duress.
Yeah,
it's like we're there for our jobs. We're not there because we want to be. We're there because social media is a crucial part of people who run
Mhm.
podcasts and run businesses.
Well, that's how a year or so ago, over a year ago, when I got on TikTok, that was the reason why I was like, this is dumb. I don't want to be on this. They're like, it's where your audience is. If you don't find a way to reach people in different quarters, you're not going to grow your podcast. And so, a year later, I'm, fucking duetting with strange women. But, but
my sister keeps telling me I got to get on TikTok for Honeysuckle Rose. And I'm
you
sitting
really
there going,
should.
I don't know what am I supposed to do? Look, keychain. I have no idea what to do on TikTok. I really don't.
Put your wares on your dog and film your dog walking around to, different sounds.
Eddie, you want to be a TikTok star?
What dog doesn't want to be a TikTok star? Hey, Andrew, anything else about the twerking or the show in general?
I think the only way they could have made it worse is if they gave her James Madison's flute.
Nice.
Well, duetting with Ariel.
Perfect.
Bravo. Bravo.
Hang on. I have an applause button for that reason.
All right. So we also get the return of Wong, who hires Jen to go after, what's his name? Donnie Blaze. Not related to another superhero with the last name Blaze, who is a former protege who essentially took the sling ring and ran. And he has been using it to become a Chris Angel style magician. And Wong's a little pissed off about that. And that also introduces the character that has scarily taken off in popularity, Madison. With 2 N's and a Y, but it's not where you think.
And she could only
this character is this
Lauderdale.
woman.
I'm sorry, Mark.
Say this actress is already getting booked for Comic-Cons.
Nice.
She has become that popular.
We like our silly.
We do.
Yeah, and it was perfect. Like, I mean, the thing is, like, okay, there's characters like Madison and there's characters like Titania, and they may be annoying and they may be irritating, but that's because they actually exist on this world and they're played perfectly.
So I watched Halloween Ends this morning before we started recording. We're recording this on Friday the 14th. And there's
or was it VOD?
It's day and date on Peacock and in theaters.
Oh, okay.
I was going to say, it's like, what theater shows a movie that early in the morning?
So I'm watching Halloween Ends this morning, and because I wasn't going to the theater to see it, and there's a scene between 2 nurses, and one nurse is just prattling on and on and on, and the other nurse finally says, why do you talk like I'm not in the room? And the nurse goes, you're right, I do that. It just, saunters out. And I'm watching that scene like, that has to be the most realistic thing in this entire movie. All right. So anyway,
I was like, in the point. It was funny, but
I was relating that back to the idea of, people acting like people as dumb as people can be.
Yep. Okay. I got to jump in with one thing really quick. The most relatable moment of this entire series. We've all had this moment. We all hate this moment.
Mm-hmm.
You go to the wedding and it's a cash bar.
Oh my God.
Okay.
I've never wanted to walk out of a wedding so fast.
So I am a former wedding photographer.
Mm-hmm.
Spent years taking pictures of weddings, and watching this episode, I was just like, so somebody went through the list of all of the complaints that have ever been at every worst wedding ever.
Put them all in there.
Yeah, and just threw it in a blender, didn't they?
Yeah. All right. What's next on the agenda there, Alexis?
All right. Well, looks like we're going to go ahead and skip the discussion about the wedding then. So the next, actually, since we've already talked about Blonsky's retreat, is, I guess then we're going to go ahead and talk about the cameo that everyone was dying for. And I swear, I think I saw like 100 comments on Twitter after every episode up until this going, where the blank is Daredevil? So I want to throw a question to you guys. I brought this up on another show. That Daredevil was teased as appearing in like the second trailer, I think it was. And we saw that he was going to be in the classic gold and red costume from the early days in the comics. He had also been teased at the end of, I can't remember which episode it is. It's the one that introduces Jacobson, the stylist who actually does make the superhero suits. And we see that he has been commissioned to make Daredevil's new costume because he walks over a box light and he basically gets mad because it's been left out in the open. And the camera zooms in and we see it's a gold devil helmet. Do you guys think that this reveal, both the helmet and then Matt Murdock walking into the courtroom, would have been so much better if they hadn't revealed Daredevil was going to be showing in the trailer?
I'll let you take that one, Andrew.
That's a good question. I kind of debate because I think, Mark, I think you might have been off for this one, but I think we talked a little bit about the fact that this show was very meta and very aware of how people were going to react to it. So I think if you were looking at it from purely a dramatic point of view, I'd say keep that out of the trailer. But if you knew exactly what you were going to do with this show, and I mean, we're coming up on the finale here, and you wanted to kind of trigger, for lack of a better word, a certain amount of stupid online outrage, then that's exactly what you do. So I think it goes back to the intent of what you're trying to do with it as well.
I think the other thing to keep in mind, and this is a fairly obvious thing, but the purpose of a commercial, the purpose of a trailer is to garner interest and get you to watch. If they put something in the trailer, you're going to watch the show to see when it happens, and when it doesn't happen the first few episodes, by that point you might be hooked into the show, or maybe you're just staying long enough because you want to see your favorite thing finally show up. So to me, from a marketing standpoint, it made sense. I agree. I tend to agree with you for dramatic purposes. Stop giving away stuff in the trailer and then wonder why there's no surprise in the theater.
Yeah,
but I get it. I get the reason why they do it.
Yeah, and I mean, my immediate reaction to anything Daredevil related at this point is hallway fight. There's gonna be the Daredevil. There's gonna be a hallway, and there's gonna be minions, and he's gonna beat the shit out of them.
No,
and
not minions. Goons. Remember, we have the conversation: the difference between henchmen or goons.
Yeah,
henchmen believe in the cause. Goons are just paid.
When did Daredevil get to like Wolverine height of fucking fan obsession? Like I remember the Daredevil Netflix show being good.
And then you had the scene in Spider-Man No Way Home, which the minute we saw the cane, I think I used this exact quote: the ceiling blew off because everyone went ecstatic.
Right, but here's the thing: like when he showed up in Spider-Man, and we're acknowledging the Netflix show has a direct connection to these, and I talked about this when we reviewed Spider-Man. I did a whole shtick on fan reaction and overreaction. And to that degree, like I get it. Like, oh, look, the thing from the other thing showed up in the thing I'm watching now. Hooray! It's a big, fat, wonderful universe. Great, I get it. Like, I don't necessarily get that excited, but I'm not. Ronnie Adams is somewhere out there going, let people like stuff. Yes, Ronnie, I hear what you're saying. It's fine if you like that sort of thing. But Andrew, it just feels like somewhere along the line, it's stopping like, this is fun to see different characters from different things show up in the same thing. It's fun to have that Avengers effect. If my favorite character doesn't show up in this thing and kill everybody, I'm burning down my local church. Wait, wow, how did we get here? Wait, what happened that suddenly Daredevil is now the bar in which if this character isn't treated the most super serial and kick the most ass, then Marvel hates men. That none of that tracks for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hard pressed to respond to that one because I don't necessarily feel that way about the character. I mean, I love the hallway fight cliche. I love fight scenes. Those are fantastic fight scenes. Like, here's my money. Give me more hallway fights. I mean, I think a little bit of it in terms of Daredevil specifically is that one, Daredevil's been around for a relatively long time in terms of the MCU. I think the first series was 2013. So
I'll wiki that to double check.
I mean, we're coming up on nearly a decade of that character being around. I think that series has always been seen as very, for lack of a better word, prestige in kind of the MCU in terms of the way it was received. Sorry?
2015.
Season 1 was solid. Half of season 2 was good, and the other half was really bad. And then season 3 was great. Can you not act like it's fucking Godfather 2 though?
For comic book fans, it is.
I guess so. Jesus Christ.
But I mean, Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a little bit again, and it gets back to people being a little bit precious about these and things like that. And I mean, if we want to get right down to what I think we're going to go to in terms of the nitty gritty of the way they portrayed Matt, I mean, on some level, I think this is I think hopefully both rewinding and then also advancing the character a little bit, where he's gone a little bit more back to the Matt that we saw in season 1 of Daredevil, where, you know what? Yeah, he goes out with Foggy and has a drink. He has a little bit of fun in his life, and he's actually willing to smile as opposed to being the endless mommy issues, severe Catholic version of that.
Did we want him to be depressed and traumatized forever?
Yeah.
And it is, it's the Punisher thing. The Punisher, as much as I get why people like him, the Punisher has one mode: kill everyone. And it's like, that's it. That's what we want for everybody. We nobody deals with anything. Nobody gets healed. Nobody gets better. Nobody tackles different aspects of their life. Everyone is just I'm killing everybody mode. How is that not boring as shit for people?
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of goes to some of the issues they had on season 2 of Punisher and the way they've tried to weave these longer stories with them. And that is no discredit to John Bernthal, who plays that character so bloody well.
Sure, absolutely. John Bernthal is fantastic. Go watch John Bernthal in a show for adults called We Own This City. Plug.
Yeah. Or go watch him in any number of things, because the guy's a fucking amazing actor.
No, only stuff by David Simon.
Yep. Oh, his podcast is great too, but anyway.
It's real quick comment on the Daredevil episode. I know that that annoyed people too, and that he does the walk of shame at the end.
Oh my God!
Heaven forbid, Daredevil has sex.
God forbid, Daredevil touched a girl. By the way, he had sex with Elektra too.
Wait, who in the podcast said it's like, oh, I'm sorry, it's not like Daredevil didn't miss the one day of Catholic school about premarital sex?
But here's the thing, like, did we forget that Daredevil regularly banged fucking Elektra, and didn't he throughout the comics? Wasn't he like up there with Hawkeye and the amount of broads he banged throughout?
Daredevil's a man whore.
Yeah, why are we acting this way?
Daredevil's like the how it should have ended Batman, where it's like, you want to know my secret identity?
Yeah. But I think the walk of shame thing is something that's associated with women. They go home with a guy, sleep with said man, and then they leave the apartment, shoes in hand, and like, look at the whore. That's our culture. That's our society, and that is what got. I'm saying it. And normally I ask the question to elicit conversation. No, I'll just fucking tell you. They saw Daredevil doing a girl thing. That's what girls do. That's what girls do, Andrew. That's what girls do.
My wife absolutely loved that. She fell off the couch. She thought it was so funny.
Okay. Only girls are whores. Men just have sex. Welcome to America 2022.
No, I'm just going to say Daredevil had the best one-liners in the whole series. I freaking love, she's like, I'm going to whoop your ass. And the line, my ass remains unwhooped. That is going down as my favorite line from the series. I love that.
You know what, though? I mean, they still wrote him like Matt, though. Like, I mean, that little monologue he gives in the bar where it's like Jennifer Walters can help people via where society fails them, and She-Hulk can help them where the law fails them. Like, that is vintage with that character. And the way he's been written in the MCU. So, I mean, yeah, in terms of the way they wrote the character, it's fine. I was not a fan of the yellow suit.
Yeah, I thought that
that's gotten a lot of polarized. Some people like it just because it's a callback to the original design that he had when he first debuted in the comics.
Original was goofy as fuck, though, and works in a comic book that was made for children. But yeah, I don't know why they went backwards with that.
I'll admit I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't think it's ugly. I'm not going, oh God, that's this. But if I had to choose, I'd pick the red suit.
I dance in the shadows. I attack goons in alleys. I'm bright yellow and red.
Completely tear that suit down, because they were basically just recolored part of the ones from the TV series, which I was never necessarily the biggest fan of. Like, I mean, I think we had this conversation on the chat. I think the 2003 suit looked a little bit better. It was a little bit lower profile. It was a little bit less kind of. The MCU version of the Daredevil suit gets a little bit strappy and a little bit kind of Liefeld.
See, I didn't. I like the season 3 suit. I think that's what you said. Season 3 suit. I liked when he looked like he had plate armor on, or like leather armor, because realistically, if you're out there fighting crime in a leotard, you're going to get stabbed a lot.
I'll admit,
and it would make more sense to have leather plating like that.
I did agree with you guys. I actually, as much as we all hate the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie, and rightfully so, I did like his costume because not only did it seem practical, I kind of like the idea of this is how somebody without endless resources would make a costume. It's got a very motorcycle leather feel to it. It would make sense that that's something he could get thrown together very easily.
Now I realize what you were saying. 2003 versus the MCU. So to be clear, I like the MCU Daredevil costume versus the 2003 one. The 2003 one looks a little BDSM to me. He looks a little too, leather-clad warrior going to the dance club. Where again, this one feels to me like this is a guy who's going to be in alleys fighting crime. He's wearing shit to protect him from being stabbed and shot.
Yeah. And I think it's just the way they kind of compose it. Like it just doesn't. It's busy. I think that's probably the better way of saying it. Like, I mean, the MCU's been able to pull off some fairly detailed designs. Like, look at any of the Iron Man armors, and yet it still doesn't look busy. Like, this one just has a bunch of stuff that they could have cleaned up from like a
almost
silhouette.
Like a steampunk aesthetic.
A little bit.
Almost like a steampunk aesthetic.
I am going to take the moment to say here also, the thing from 2003 that they brought over that I didn't like was all the CGI Daredevil moments. that did not work well.
Okay.
And Jesse and I did have a laugh on another podcast about this episode, though, when Jen takes his helmet off and it's like, oh, what a surprise. Daredevil gets his secret identity exposed. In other news, the Trix Rabbit must suffer. It's like worst kept secret in the Marvel universe.
Oh, is that where you got that from when you were antagonizing Pat?
No, that's actually just a line I heard someone say. It's like, oh, and in other news, water is wet, the sky is blue, water is wet, the Trix Rabbit must suffer. And that's just always stuck with me. I love that line.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
Gentlemen, I think we have to talk about the finale.
Of course.
Yes. Everyone signed their NDAs, right?
All right. I fucking love the finale. I thought that was great. The whole like beginning fight, and then she just stops because this is dumb. Why we're doing this? And then that tacit recognition that this is the way everything in Marvel ends. Maybe can we do something different? And she's consulting. And Andrew, this is where we have to talk about this.
Okay, this is evidence.
Yeah, go ahead.
Some goddamn intern listening to us.
Yeah. Unpaid intern who has been spying on the Radulich Broadcasting Network for 10 years now. In our private conversations, because this wasn't said on a podcast.
Yes.
All right, secret's out. It's Eddie.
Fair enough.
Was he the
cut
dog
me
with
off,
50
Andrew,
eyes?
and cut me off, Andrew, and talk about plain English for a second, and so give everyone context as to why the thing with Kevin to me and you was so hilarious.
Okay, so there's this really great podcast called Plain English, and that's basically what the idea of the podcast is. They take very complex conversations and they break it down into a relatively short, kind of 1 hour per episode. And just last week, they dropped an episode talking about some of the AI stuff that's going on right now. One of the things you've probably seen is that there's a text-based, basically, I'll just use app. So basically you put in descriptive words, and this thing will harvest imagery from the internet and compose it into something that fits that.
Most of it's nightmare fuel.
Yeah, basically. Well, in some cases, it seems to be quite good. But in any case, this kind of turned into a conversation around, it's starting with art. They're also doing this for music. So the host specifically said he could go into this app and say, I would like someone to write me a song in the combination of Billie Eilish and Taylor Swift that is both happy and wistful. And this will actually go and it will do that. So obviously, you're getting into a lot of questions around the nature of creativity and artistry and things like that. And of course, the conversation kept on going and they started talking about, okay, does this not make sense that this would be the way you'd want to try and apply this to, say, film scripting, particularly if you have film scripts for very, very high value properties, such as like a $200 million movie or hey, a high value streaming service. So that conversation happens. Mark actually calls me and we actually talk offline, not on a podcast format about this because we found this whole thing so fascinating. And lo and behold, Kevin shows up.
It openly says that it is an uncredited actor, but I am convinced that's either Feige or they fed his voice into a computer to create
An AI feed.
an AI voice that uses his tones.
Yeah.
All right, so
I'm kind of surprised we didn't get any jokes about how you actually pronounce his last name.
Feige.
Well, it's Feige, it's Feige. I've heard a couple of different, or I've probably attempted a couple of pronunciations, but
yeah. So she thinks she's going to see Kevin Funkadactyl, and it turns out she's just seeing Kevin the AI. Ha! That's funny. The conversation that takes place between her and Kevin, though, struck me as hilarious because because again, and not to beat this particular dead horse that we've been talking about for the past hour and 20 minutes, but there is an antagonism between Hollywood writers, Hollywood in general, and fandoms, and it's like cater to our needs, read our minds, cater to our needs because we're not really great at expressing ourselves and what we really want, but do what we want or face the consequences. And Hollywood going, how about you let the professionals just tell good stories? And they're at loggerheads. And so this show is calling that out, which is why I liked it so much, because I don't need to see another CGI battle. I don't need to see another epic conclusion. I don't need to see another war. One of the things I liked about the Scream series was the meta commentary about the horror genre. I like when something takes a point of view, even if it's one I don't agree with. See every podcast I've ever done.
Although this episode was so meta that I think even Deadpool would blush.
It didn't bother me.
Apparently I saw somebody on Twitter actually share this or call it Ryan Reynolds and say, dude, the bar has been raised for you.
So the perspective of the show is superhero stuff can be made fun of. There are things that there are things to examine. There are things that don't work, and it's fun to call those things out. This should not be anyone's holy bible. Okay, this isn't the thing that you should be basing your entire life and personality around. It's a thing that exists for entertainment. That's what I liked about that ending, was it went so far against the grain, because I already know that there's going to be other shows out there. There's going to be they're friends of ours. They're going to look at that and go, why did we get that kind of a conclusion? Why didn't I get my epic fight? Why didn't I get this? Why didn't I get that? Why? There's only 160 million shows out there. Why does every single one of them have to end the same way? Why can't this one kind of look at all of that and go, that's dumb. Why are we doing this? And that's the end. That's the end of the show.
That was kind of the problem with Miss Marvel on some level. They didn't have a better resolution than the one they gave us.
Right. Yeah, it's like they write themselves into a corner and then they go, well, I guess we have to have a fight scene now. Shang-Chi was kind of the same thing, and Robert brought that up. Had you just leave it between Shang-Chi and his father to settle their differences, it's fine. When you had the giant dragon battle and everything else that went on during that conclusion is when, it went to the point where even the pitch meeting guy called that out. It's like, oh, over the top Marvel ending, check. Wait. Sometimes subtle is fine. Sometimes, subtle works just as well.
This wasn't subtle, though.
No, but what I mean, I'm subtle in the sense of not over the top. What's the word I'm looking for?
It's like she broke through the Disney
that was funny
screen. No, I'm agreeing, but I'm saying that is over the top. It's like you can call it subtle. It doesn't have to be over the top. I'm like, well, what the hell do you call this?
Not a giant CGI dragon battle.
No kaiju fights.
Yeah, or at the end, Venom, the CGI blobs fighting each other. It made my eyes hurt. Yeah. I liked the ending just fine. I think my only issue was when they were like, how do you want to resolve this? And she's like, I just want Emil Blonsky to take responsibility for himself. And it just cuts to him going, yeah, I give up. Take me to prison.
Yeah.
I'm actually not going to lie. The fact that he did that, I think it actually worked with the way his character has been reintroduced in this series. I thought
I needed a little bit more. That's all I'm saying. I just needed a step before that.
Okay. It's like, no, he actually says, and I actually even like the idea that he is so caught up in being as a motivational speaker that he didn't bother to check what the theme was of the event he was hosting at that area. It's just like, dude, did you not even read what their what they said they were going to talk about?
Yeah. Emil Blonsky as Jordan Peterson was kind of a funny thing. Boy, are we going to catch heat for that line now. I think I agree. I really liked it. I like the fact they called it out. I think they needed both Alicia and I liked it. I think her immediate reaction, and I definitely share this, is you needed to not have the last scene just her walking in the courtroom. You needed one last courtroom scene.
Right.
You needed to kind of tie that up. And on some level, you also, as much as they were being kind of too cute by half with it, they almost did need to do the manual rewind back to the scene where Jen comes in, have that resolution happen, because otherwise none of it makes sense as to why half the things happen. So it does also turn into a little bit of mildly unsatisfying at the same time as kind of quite clever.
Mm-hmm. What'd you think, Alexis?
Definitely surreal. And I agree that it is probably a good thing that we didn't get a final CGI battle. I even love how they try to bring, it's like they bring in Hulk and Titania, and it's just like, why are they here? I mean, okay, I get that you want to wrap things up with them, but it makes no sense. But again, that also goes back a little bit more to what Andrew, you and I were talking about when Mark had to step away for a bit, that Titania is kind of a disappointment, as she's supposed to be the main villain. She's supposed to be the main antagonist, and she's just an annoyance.
Yeah, I think that there was no main villain here.
That's what we talked about when you had to step away. We discussed how the show, because we were talking about, it's like, again, I'm just going to repeat this. We discussed how leading up to this, there were so many fan theories about who was trying to steal Jennifer's blood and to what aim. And I heard so many great ones. And it turns out it's this douchey little whiny prick who's upset because he got stood up after our first date.
Okay. So for those watching this, they're like, why won't he complain more about She-Hulk? Okay. So I have two complaints. One, Scar looked terrible. Ugh.
Scar's entrance was terrible. It's like,
yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm assuming they're going to explain this all in World War Hulk, but it's like, oh, I'm sorry. You brought in the Hulk's son and he's got a man bun.
He's got a man bun. I'm like, ugh, I don't get too annoyed about stuff like that, but I looked at him and I looked at him in the comics and I went, okay. Now, see, there are sometimes I do agree, like, you really are just tweaking nipples as comic fans. Like, can we make it look as ridiculous as possible? Sure.
Apparently, they wanted to make it look like a Fast and the Furious ending. No, I'm serious. That's actually what this was supposed to be. It's a parody of the ending of the Fast and the Furious movies.
Why weren't they all drinking Coronas?
I wish I know it's only. I wish the last episode had been an hour, and the first half of it had been hulked out heroes. But don't do hulked out heroes. Do hulked out villains. I wish, because there was a perfect setup there. And I think they could have had an even bigger laugh when they called it out. So go with me on this. They have She-Hulk's blood, but everybody has a syringe. And that whole group of toxic men that all hate the She-Hulk and all of that, that whole group of, incels, neckbeards, whatever you want to call them, they all take it. And the first half an hour is She-Hulk trying to like depower them as they're running around fucking hulking out, smashing sororities, it's just anywhere where women congregate, they're knocking out yoga studios, wherever the women are, they're just like, rah, I'm Hulk and I will smash these things, and she's got to run around with her team to try to depower them. And then somewhere in the middle of all that this is ridiculous, and then do the thing where she breaks out and goes sees Kevin. See, there was a perfect opportunity to really go over the top, and they just kind of went meh. Everyone gets the point. I'm like, no, this was an opportunity to do something really fun and really big. Yeah. Andrew, you're starting to say something? Yeah,
I was going to jump in there. See, I think it got set up in another way, and this is something that even was bugging me from the start of the episode 1 is, when that guy injected himself with the Hulk blood, I was waiting for him to pitch over. Because but Hulk said it. It's like his blood is so toxic because of all the gamma radiation. Then it's like it
killed Stanley.
It killed. Oh, did it?
Yeah.
No, remember that scene in the Incredible Hulk? We got gamma poisoning.
A droplet of his blood ends up in the soda and it kills him.
Yeah, but it's like, why didn't they have that? And he said it was only by virtue of like some kind of genetic anomaly in both him and Jen that they were able to survive exposure to the Hulk blood. So it's like, that also begs the question. It's like, Jesus Christ, if Bruce Banner sneezed, do they need to call in a hazmat team?
Hulk boogers.
Well, we're going back into lockdown. Hulk gave everyone the cold.
I don't know if I would have had him like just keel over, but I was expecting something like what we got with the leader. It was the idea. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, you actually thought this would turn you into a giant green Hulk? No, now you look like the end of Akira or something.
Yeah, you look like Stellan Skarsgård in Dune. You're the Baron Harkonnen now.
Okay, I don't know what's worse, showing up as Baron Harkonnen or the end of Akira. Take your pick.
I've never seen Akira, so
in
I can't
short,
say.
I don't think She-Hulk Attorney at Law is getting criticized fairly. I think there's room for fair criticism. The writing is slight. It's goofy at times. There's something that you said before that I wanted to touch on and just hadn't had an opportunity. I also think that people don't understand like sitcoms anymore. Have you watched a sitcom? They're goofy as fucking shit. But, The Big Bang Theory is a great example of this. It's a goofy-ass show with, a weak structure. It's a pretty girl, smart, awkward guys, hilarity ensues. But
not understanding nerd culture.
Yeah. But everyone gets upset about that show because it feels like an attack on the thing they like. How I Met Your Mother. I brought that one up specifically because that's like the one, Andrew, that you told me get your goat.
Mark.
Huh? Is he gonna
get my eye twitching?
How I Met Your Mother was friends in a bar hanging out for however many seasons it was, and goofy stories and everything. None of this stuff. I mean, you had the occasional poignant episode, just like you had the occasional like different strokes where someone gets molested. But for the most part, sitcoms are traditionally goofy and slight. None of this stuff is super serious. I don't know why you expect that with She-Hulk when the premise of it was this is going to be Marvel's first sitcom. So it matched the tone for the structure they were going for.
See, and I think that also goes to a term I've kind of come up with, is that you can take something seriously without being serious about it.
Right.
So like even taking those examples like, How I Met Your Mother versus The Big Bang Theory. Like The Big Bang Theory took nothing seriously. It never worked to kind of understand the culture it was engaging with.
That's not totally fair. Because there were definitely episodes of The Big Bang series that dealt with things seriously, but it dealt with more like emotional stuff. It dealt with relationships.
Oh yeah.
The Big Bang Theory wasn't about nerd culture. It was about the people in it and how they deal with life and love.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd say at the end of the day, I don't know if it quite always treated it right. I'd say on some level, How I Met Your Mother at times was probably a better nerd series because it had running jokes with your friends. It had those sorts of things. And again, it goes back to, things like you look at the MCU, like it took Iron Man very seriously. Was it always serious about it though? No, because Tony Stark's kind of you're dealing very much on that character.
Hang on, let's call that one out. I'm dying. My suit's killing me. I'm at the end of my rope. Let me go hang out and eat donuts.
Yeah, but if you're a set hedonist like Tony Stark is, that makes sense.
Okay, then he'd have gone to fucking Thailand. Never mind.
But I mean, again, like this is a good example. Like, you go back to the conversation we started with where we talk about what's the source of this version of She-Hulk. If you look at Dan Slott and you look at that run, and me not reading it, I can't speak to it. But again, if this is really treating that as an authentic, thoughtful piece of media that they want to try and adapt, then I think they took it seriously, but again, without being serious.
Here's the thing. The presumption, I'm insulted on behalf of the people who work at Marvel on the presumption that they go into work purposely to do a bad job.
Yes.
None of these people want this. None of these people at Marvel want to go to work, put in 16-hour days, put something out in the world to have angry neckbeards piss on it and them.
Yeah.
And say things like, you people are dumb. You people hate men. You people hate this. You don't, you hate comics. God forbid, if you are a writer, there are easier gigs out there. Yeah. Go write for fucking Boston Legal. No one's hating you on Twitter. No one's saying you're bad at your job when you write for fucking General Hospital. But God forbid you take a Marvel show. fuck, you're putting your life in your hands, man. And a lot of these people, and Robert and I have talked about this, like they may not be comic book fans. They got a gig as a writer. They went to college. They got, they interned around Hollywood. They got this gig after that gig, and finally they land a paid gig to write a Marvel show. And they just want to do a good job, because who the hell wants to get fired? They want to do a good enough job to get hired for the next one. No one's going into this going, well, see how we can fuck the comic book fans today.
So on this show, they maybe made that as a conscious decision, just to try and tweak the nose, knowing what the response would be at this point.
Yeah.
The show does have its flaws. If we get a second season, I haven't read yet if it's been renewed yet or not for a second season. We do know that Tatiana Maslany is going to appear in the upcoming Daredevil series, which I think makes sense. Again, it's like having her as a lawyer works well with Matt Murdock as a lawyer. It's like those characters just will work together. And admittedly, Maslany and Cox have really good chemistry together. I liked seeing them on screen together. But just remember, guys, it could have been this.
What is that?
That is Brigitte Nelson as She-Hulk when there was plans for her to have her own movie in 1991 with New World Pictures. I'm not kidding. We almost got this, folks.
I kind of want to see that version of She-Hulk team up with the Dolph Lundgren Punisher, but then I'm a sadist.
I kind of want them to drop that reference on season 2 of She-Hulk. Because come on, the Incredible Hulk trailer at the beginning of this one was pretty damn good.
Oh, I laughed my ass off at that. But to round this all the way back to the beginning, my wife looked at me and goes, "What are they doing?" Like, that would be the Incredible Hulk opening, Melissa. There's your audience, everybody. Your audience is me and my wife. That's it. You have to appeal to both of us, not just one of us.
Although I'm going to go ahead and say, while I do like the song that they used for the end credits, part of me was kind of hoping it was going to be the sad piano piece from the end of The Incredible. do, 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 do. I was kind of hoping for that to make an appearance.
All right, take me home, baby doll.
All right. Is there anything else you guys want to bring up before we wrap this up? Is there anything that I forgot to include?
I'm going to hit two things. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Well, I just want to say, because a lot of what inspired me to come on and do this today was watching the Critical Drinkers review of She-Hulk, and this is like his third or fourth one. They've all been negative. It's like it was like,
yeah,
he did one based on the trailer. I was like, come on, guy, you. Boy, are you chumming the water now?
Yeah, I love you. Sent me that and said flat out that this was homework, and my exact quote to him was like, "Well, this dude obviously didn't get enough hugs from his mom."
Look, I don't have a problem with most of what the Critical Drinker does, but Andrew and I were having this conversation yesterday where I said there is an element of what he's doing where he's now cultivated a fan base and he's making content for that fan base. He knows what they want and he gives it to them and he gets the hits for it and he lives or dies by those hits, which makes me think some of what he does is inauthentic, which is what I really don't like. It's not his opinions. It's that he's now coming across as not authentic, which kind of bothers me. And so when I watched his review of She-Hulk, like, I don't doubt he feels a lot of that way, but I also think he was wildly unfair about this show. Jennifer Walters is absolutely changed by this experience. Jennifer Walters, I think, is a better version of who she is by the end of the series than when she started. These were two things he complained about and said that wasn't the case, that she was always unlikable. I think also that criticism that she's an unlikable character, not to a lot of women who, there was a comment that he made, and I definitely wanted to address this really quick. There was a comment that he made about Jennifer Walters wants polar opposite things. She wants this, but she wants the opposite of this. She wants this other thing, but the opposite of this other thing. Watch the video. You'll know what I'm talking about. And I went, yeah, that's a lot of women I know. Sorry, I don't feel like me offensive about it, but that is a lot of women who are just like, I want both cuddles and space. How? They're two different things. They're the exact opposite. But somehow that's the kind of shit you get from people. They want, I want to be told I'm hot, but appreciated for my brains. Nope. It's like on and on and on. And, so he's attacking this character for being that way, except that that is representation of not every woman, but a lot of women, and probably some men. That is a very human thing, to not be able to make up your fucking mind what it is you want and not be able to communicate it clearly. There's a phrase in the human experience: I want to have my cake and eat it too. It means that you want to set the rules, but you want to be the only one that benefits from them. That's a lot of people. That's not just this character. And she suffers for it. Get a hold of yourself. Like, interact with people outside of your own goddamn bubble. Off my soapbox. Go ahead, Andrew.
Okay. I don't have anything profoundly as that, unfortunately. I mean, the show, I enjoyed the hell out of the show. I think we've provided some pretty fair criticism about it. I think there's two other points I want to drop off, and I don't think there's a lot of detail about this. One, I got a real kick out of all the family scenes. I think all of those, again, kind of rang true for I think somebody who would be in this situation to suddenly find out your kid is suddenly a superhero, and some of the comments you get, it's like, oh, I heard this guy at the coffee shop wants to be the superhero. I give him your number. And then, the cast on this is great. Tatiana Maslany, Canadian, by the way, did a fantastic job, I think.
She hides her accent better than you do.
Sorry?
She hides her accent better than you do. Sorry, I love it when you say a boot and stuff. It's like, oh, your Canadian is showing. It's so cute.
Let me tell you all about it. Tuck your Canadian away there, Andrew.
Sorry. It makes me laugh. It really does. It's adorable.
Anyway, she did a great job on this. I think for a lot of the flaws that this series had, if you didn't have an actor of her talent playing this role and playing that character with as many sides as she has, this thing would have fallen apart.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I haven't been, this is the first time I've really watched her in. I never watched Orphan Black, which I heard was really good. And she literally played 15 people in that show. But she did great. She very much held this show together in a lot of ways. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
All right. Like I said, from what so I got to hear on Wiki, they haven't greenlit a second season, but they are fully intending to have She-Hulk start to come into the MCU films. This is something we talked briefly about when we discussed Werewolf by Night the other night, plug, that this is kind of a new trend that Marvel is going with, the idea that they don't have to constantly introduce new characters and have them always be stuck in their own entities. This is how they're going to start introducing a lot of new characters, and then they're going to have them start appearing in MCU films. Werewolf by Night, for example, we got the 1 hour special. It's not a full movie. It's not a TV show, but we are going to see Gael Garcia Bernal as Jack Russell Terrier show up in future projects. So this is kind of what they're doing. This is a good way for them to introduce the characters without having to constantly worry about, creating more and more content specifically for them. And again, we do know she's going to appear in the new Daredevil project. I'm looking forward to that. I think that's a really good idea to have her come in for that. So, hopefully we'll get to see more She-Hulk in the future. We'll get to see her in some more projects. I'm blurring all my words together all of a sudden. Oh my God, I have not been drinking. So, I think this was a good start for the character. And I did enjoy the series. So... I guess on that note, shall we move into plugs?
All right. Last night, myself and Jesse Starcher continued our trek from the corner to the deuce. This time we talked about season 3 featuring Amsterdam. Our reviews are getting increasingly, and I joked about this last night, they're less about the deeper meaning of these shows and more of, hey, Jesse, remember this line? We literally did a bit from the show. Like me and him did Avon talking to Slim Charles about what kind of muscle they can hire. By the way, Jesse's new name is Eggy Mule. So yeah,
I'm not calling him that.
Yes, you are. Our reviews are increasingly just us gushing about The Wire and less about like what's going on in the world. We had a good time talking about it. It's hard when there's so much to talk about, and the show and The Wire gets ever increasingly more complex as it gets to season 5, and I want to keep these shows to an hour. So it becomes a lot of, hey Jesse, remember when Avon Boxdale did this? Hey Jesse, remember when McNulty did that? So that's us for about an hour. Though there is a discussion of, and this again goes into the Amsterdam stuff. There is a discussion of drug decriminalization, right or wrong, before we got into Memberberry. So check it out. If you've been enjoying our From the Corner to the Deuce series as part of TV Party tonight, I think we did another good review there for The Wire season 3. We also reviewed Hellraiser on Hulu. That was myself, Sean Comer, and Robert Winfrey. We got the old band back together for that. And what else did we do this week? That was Monday. Yeah, that was Monday. Tuesday, Alexis already said she did Werewolf by Night with Andrew Orozco. Jesse's been dropping a bunch of unspoken issues this week, something called Unity. And then this weekend, we've got some canned ham for you. We've got our 2-part retrospective of the Crow movies. Part 1 and part 2. The first 2 Crow movies as part 1 of that series drops tomorrow, Saturday, October 15th. And then the last 2 movies, 3 and 4, are on Sunday. And we kick things off again with we're doing a Long Road to Ruin for the Of Michael Myers trilogy and H2O. That's on Monday. On Tuesday, we'll be reviewing Halloween Ends. Alexis and Robert will be reviewing Midnight Club on Wednesday. And
Are we still doing Only Murders in the Building on Wednesday as well?
Yes, we are. Thank you for reminding me. And so that's twice. You'll get a double shot of Alexis. We will be reviewing season 2 of Only Murder. I got to finish watching that. Only Murders in the Building season 2. That's all for me. Thanks. I'm driving. Check me out on Facebook and Twitter. All of those links will be in the description of the podcast.
All right, and as far as my plugs, that's Honeysuckle Rose Creations, where fashion meets fandom at the intersection of geek and chic. As soon as we wrap things up with Midnight Club and Only Murders in the Building, I'm going to be heading to Omaha, Nebraska for Anime NebraskaCon, one of the biggest anime conventions in the Midwest. Looking forward to it. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. We're also getting ready, even though, yes, I am technically celebrating Halloween, I still got to prep for the holidays. We, of course, are going to be kicking things off before too long with our Black Friday sale. We're going to have so much stuff. Everything in the shops, both Etsy and Handmade at Amazon, is going to be 20% off. And for every order that is placed between Black Friday and Christmas Eve, we will be donating $5 per order to St. Jude's Children's Hospital. We do this charity drive every year. We're excited to be a part of it. So remember, you won't only be getting wonderful gifts for your family and friends, you'll be helping out a lot of children in need. Again, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and like I mentioned earlier, Under Duress, Twitter. That is Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic. And so on behalf of Mark and Andrew and everyone else who watched,
you're not going to let Andrew plug his fucking jiu-jitsu studio?
I'm sorry. Did I skip your plug, Andrew?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Boo!
I'm polite about it, but Mark had to call it out, so there we go.
All right, look, that's my job. You're Canadian. You're supposed to be polite. I'm from New York. I'm a fucking asshole.
And I'm going to apologize.
And this is only my third. This is only my third show running on my own. And Andrew, you and I actually haven't done a show with me hosting, so I'm sorry. I forgot about your studio.
Oh, no worries at all. No worries at all. I do train at
the beating will be severe later. It's fine.
I will be flogged.
Yes, publicly. I have a flogger. I'll go get it and show it to you if you want. Do you see what's coming?
God.
Do you see what's coming?
Good night,
hang on. Wait 1 sec. No, I'm just kidding.
All right. Okay. All right. I'm going to get my plug in now.
Yeah. Do it before I start breaking out the armament.
Yeah. I do train at Havoc and Esteem Martial Arts here in Calgary, Alberta. They can be found on all your major social media platforms and everything like that, including TikTok. I believe not Twitter, but definitely Instagram and Facebook. Also, go check out the Budo Brothers channel on YouTube. That's where my instructor, Jay Cooper, does reality check breakdowns on various kind of self-defense scenarios and things like that. He did a great one this week on road rage, actually, that I think goes to some very core things that I think everyone should consider. But anyway, go check that out. And thank you both very much. Oh, I forgot. I think I am due to be back here probably in November sometime to do our annual war movie review. And then I'll be joining, I think, sometime in January to go to Generation Kill as part of the Corner to the Deuce series.
Here, I'll tell you what you're doing. Give me a second. Andrew Graham can be found.
And I'm doing the crown.
Yes. Okay. So you're on the Lord of, assuming you still are, November 14th. You will be reviewing the Lord of the Rings, Power of Rings, Ring Power, whatever the fuck the name of the show is called.
I think I'm probably hunting that one.
And then the Veterans Day show is November 17th because I had to wait till you were coming back from hunting. That's Full Metal Jacket, The Outpost, and Hamburger Hill. And yes, The Crown is in December, if I remember correctly.
Yes, the first.
Yeah. Yes. And what was the other one you said you were doing?
Generation Kill, and I want to say it's January.
Yes, Generation Kill is January 19th.
Perfect.
All right. Am I forgetting anything else?
Nope. Hit the button.
All good here.
All right. Be well, be safe, behave.